So I have returned after the best part of a week away on holiday. But if you're thinking, hold on a second, I've seen videos with you on within the last few days. Yeah, I sort of stacked them before I went away. Just there was some content going up on the channel. And yes, if they seemed a bit sort of stale and irrelevant, well, they probably were. Well, apart from the Aaron Wan-Bissaka one and maybe the Fulkrug one, I still think Aaron Wan-Bissaka was a brilliant signing and was my hammer of the year. And I still think Fulkrug will probably leave West Ham for all the reasons that I said. But I went away, and the idea was to go away and completely switch off. Not just from West Ham, by the way, from switch the phone off, which I almost did. I almost managed to do it. Actually, somebody said to me today, "Oh, did you coincide your breakaway with the opening of the transfer window?" I definitely didn't. That's just when I could get a little bit of time away. And I looked at the transfer window when I got the message. I thought, let me have a little look at the transfer window. So the transfer window, does it technically open today? Yes, it does. But then it closes again for a little bit. Something to do with registration in the Club World Cup and whatnot. And I think it opens again. So I think it opens now, closes on the 10th, then opens up again on the 16th. Not that I think any of it will matter a jot, because I think West Ham has still not quite got their ducks lined up in terms of transfers and signings. And I think I'm a bit behind the curve on this one. But what I do know is I think we're still going to press ahead with the structure of Graham Potter and Carl McCauley, and I think we're going to be relying on David Sullivan to close the deals. And as I understand it, he's on a super yacht. He's had a slightly different holiday to me. He's on a super yacht, $500,000 a week. $500,000 a week to rent this super yacht. There you go. I guess he can't afford to buy one. He can only afford to rent one for £500,000 for the week. But anyway, so I don't think there's going to be any players getting purchased in the first part of this window. So I think maybe we won't be making these signings for the first half of this month. But we'll get into that into a little bit more detail. But the idea was that I'd go away and I'd switch my phone off. That stuff is hard to do. It's really hard to do. And it probably took me a couple of days of being... Because I was in the middle of nowhere. Honestly, I went to Norway and I was in the middle of nowhere, right? And I was very, very pleased to do so. And you realise how much your phone is pinging and how much you use technology once you have a little detox for 2 or 3 days. But anyway, so in the main, I've missed pretty much everything to do with anything, not just West Ham, but everything else as well. But one little bit of news did manage to sneak through. And, well, a couple of little bits. You check your phone and bits pop up. And it was, you'll know this by now, but it was the 10M Mubama rumour. And it was something along the lines of, when I read the headline, and it got me, as clickbait, it got me. I thought, I've got to look into this a little bit more. And the headline was something along the lines of, Fabrizio Romano confirms something like Lille and Ipswich interest in £10 million 10M Mubama. Well, initially that's a surprise, as replacement for Delap and David. So hold on a second, let's just unpack this for a second. I had to click. I thought, I know I'm having a detox. I know I'm meant to be staying away from it, but I thought, I've got to check this out. Could this possibly be true? Now, I don't know whether it's true or whether it's not true. And Romano didn't do his usual, here we go, which is what he does as a sort of rubber stamp for transfers that he thinks are going through. But he is sort of reliable. He's the top in the know in world football, I guess, isn't he? And he was suggesting that Manchester City would be ready to sell 10M Mubama for £10 million. That's surprise number one. I think surprise number 2 and 3, that Ipswich would have him as a replacement for Liam Delap. So Ipswich are always going to do this, right? Ipswich are always going to, at the point they got relegated, and they would have to sell Delap, and he might be going to Chelsea or something like that. Apparently, I'm still playing catch-up today. I don't really know what's gone on the last week, as I say. But what has not changed is they were always going to have to replace him. And they were probably going to do what they were going to do before, when they got Delap, which was get a player and hope he becomes something big. But Mubama, that would be the choice. And £10 million. The other one was Jonathan David, because they're in the same boat. Now, Leo obviously played Champions League football this season. And I think they've qualified for the Europos Cupos next year. They've not got Champions League again. So there's still a team playing in Europe, and I guess they're going to look to do the same. So they haven't got any money for Jonathan David, so it's not like they've sold him for $50 million. They're going to go and reinvest some of it in there. So could it be that this would be the Jonathan David replacement? I was absolutely astounded by that, because Look, first of all, we don't know if it's true yet, right? So that's the thing. But it's very detailed. It's quite an interesting one to make up. As if you're going to make up a story, you'd probably make up something a little bit different, a little bit more juicy. That story is really only juicy to a very finite number of people, isn't it? I think the first one, look, Mubama himself, I thought he should have had more chances towards the end at West Ham. And again, you don't know how much truth there is in this, but at the point where he wasn't going to sign a new contract, or he was stalling on a new contract, he wanted more money than we were prepared to give him. And West Ham are really bad at this stuff. West Ham, up until the point where we renegotiated with Lewis Orford, West Ham are really, really bad at negotiating with our youngsters. I think we somehow think that because someone's come from our academy, they sort of owe us a favour and we have to pay him low wages. But anyway, we didn't meet his demands. We heard his wages were really, really high and he was demanding to play first-team football. Well, I think him joining Manchester City disproved half of that because he hasn't really played first-team football, has he? He's played, I think he made one start in the Premier League, possibly. He definitely played at least once in the Cup because he scored a goal. But he's not played. And I think he should have played. I think if there were times during the end of Moyes' reign when, we had injuries to strikers, didn't have a striker, and I just thought, come on, just play the lad. Let's see. Let's at least give him some inkling that might persuade him to stay, or at least we can find out a little bit more about him and see if he's going to be good enough. But I have to hold my hand up here. I was far from certain that this player was going to be good enough anyway. So I was surprised. £10 million for someone. But where's that £10 million price tag come from? Unless Romano's made it up, of course. Well, maybe that's just come from... It can't have come from him scoring one goal in the FA Cup. And I don't know what the compensation package was from Manchester City. At best, we might have got £1.5 million or something like that. I can't imagine it was much more than that. But what happened in the intervening period that turned him from basically not a free transfer because the tribunal decides upon the fee, ultimately, if the clubs can't come to an agreement. What turns a player from that to £10 million when he hasn't shown anything? Yeah, and so maybe it must be potential and it must be promise and it must be the things he's done in the past or he's done at youth level or anything like that. And I'm quite prepared for this not to be true, by the way. But if it is, and I think this is why it caught my attention probably more than anything else, and why even it got past my own sort of virtual firewall, my own self-imposed firewall, which is thou shalt not use technology. I don't know why I've gone all biblical with it, but I shall not use technology when I'm away. I was very good. I was very disciplined for most of it, but that one article, that one thing popped up. I thought I've got to click on that. I've got to have a look. I thought if this is true, this is not good for West Ham. If he does do that, if he signs for Ipswich and starts banging in goals in the Championship, they get promoted, and he becomes the next Liam Delap, well, that's not very good, is it? That doesn't make us look particularly good. As I say, I think West Ham are particularly crap. The way we negotiate a lot of stuff, but this might be the thing we are absolutely worst at. I think that's bad. But if Lille sign 10M Mubama as the replacement for Jonathan David, the striker that we chased unsuccessfully for the best part of 6 months, well, it looks awful. I guess it's not about looks, is it, in that sense? But probably the worst part about it, and you would have to ask, you have to question this sort of stuff, and I think there's a certain level of financial mismanagement which always goes on at West Ham. A prime example, park for one moment whether you believe Ruben Amorim is a good or a bad manager. Park that, because at the point we were interested in him, we didn't know, right? We didn't pay for Ruben Amorim because he was going to cost an £8 million buyout. Actually, forget that for a second. Let's go with someone who we looked at in January, who had, I think it might have been a £6 million buyout, which was Marco Silva from Fulham. We could have got him, but he had a buyout clause, and we weren't prepared to match it. Yet we end up paying off managers and paying out severance terms. And I don't know how much Lopetegui got paid out. If you would agree that he had a 2-year contract, which most do, and he was on £3.5–4 million a year, then we've ended up paying that money anyway. That money we were reluctant to pay on the outset. So I think there's a very much a financial mismanagement from West Ham, and we're really crap at this stuff. Really crap at it. And I'm still struggling to sort of fathom it in my mind that West Ham can let a player go. Manchester City can seize on that as a financial opportunity. And you know this, if Manchester City sell him to Lille or Ipswich, and it is £10 million, then it'd be £10 million plus whatever, 20% of any sell-on profit and a buyback option. I mean, it's going to make West Ham look really, really bad. Leave us with massive amounts of egg on our face, isn't it, really? And the worst bit is if he turns out to be a good player. I think that's all this other stuff. Put all that to one side. The money mismanagement and what a bad decision it was. Because it will have been a collective failure from everyone at the club, by the way. Unless there was someone at the academy. There probably was someone at the academy saying, can we sign this guy up? He's going to be a player. So I will exclude them from this. But if that happens and he goes on to be a really, really good player, then it's going to look bloody awful, isn't it? It just really highlight how poor our decision making is. And I know whenever we speak about, players that have left West Ham or about to leave West Ham, then people always say, well, look, name me a player that's left West Ham and gone on to achieve something. And of course, there are lots. But I understand, going back from Ray Houghton to Tony Adams to John Terry to, even... I remember the first time I saw Kieran Richardson from, hold on a second, at Man United running down the wing there. He's not the best example in the world. Liam Ridgewell. There's plenty. There's plenty of players. Leon Britton was another one. Junior Stanislas came back. There's plenty of players who've gone and played, who West Ham have let go, and they've gone and played at the top flight. So to various degrees of success. So it's not like there's nobody who's been at the West Ham Academy who's left and gone on and achieved something. All clubs do it. Look, Chelsea did it with Declan Rice. And that's why we picked him up. So there'll always be people who say, well, it doesn't matter. He's probably not going to do anything. And I'm not going to sit here claiming, I'm not going to turn around and point to a video that I recorded 2 years ago saying, don't let this guy go. He's going to be brilliant. Because that video doesn't exist. I never said it. I never said it because I didn't think it. If I'm perfectly honest, I thought at the time, very, very early on, I thought Sonny Perkins was the better player out of the two. Shows how much I know, right? But anyway, I'm not the one that's got to be good at spotting talent and identifying it and seeing how it's going to develop and seeing how much money they're worth. That's not my job. But it is the club's job to do that. And I just hope we ain't got this one wrong.